Have you ever been completely alone, with only the hum of an engine and the whisper of the wind for company? A solitude so deep, it feels like you are the last person on earth. For the American trucker, this feeling is a constant companion, a silent partner on the long haul. It is in these moments of quiet reflection, cruising down a desolate stretch of highway, that the world seems to shrink to the size of your cab. The hypnotic drone of 18 wheels on pavement can feel like a peaceful meditation. But sometimes, that silence is deceptive. Sometimes, it is just the deep breath before the storm. What you are about to discover now might surprise you. This is a story that begins in that very silence. On the legendary Interstate 80, cutting a lonely path through the vast, frozen expanse of Wyoming, the landscape outside is a brilliant, unforgiving white, a desert of snow and ice under a steel gray sky. To most, it would look like the edge of the world. But for one man, it was just another Tuesday. At the helm of his faithful Peterbilt, a rig he called the Iron Maiden, sat Big John. At 62 years old, his face was a roadmap of a life lived on the road. Every line etched into his skin told a story of 1,000 sunrises, 1,000,000 miles, and 40 years of dedication to the trucker life. He knew this route like the back of his own hand, a hand hardened by decades of gripping a steering wheel, through every kind of weather imaginable. Maybe you know that feeling, the weight of the miles behind you and the long stretch of highway ahead. This particular journey was supposed to be routine. A simple delivery, a familiar route, and then the satisfying turn back towards home, back to Nebraska. This trip had a special deadline, one that had nothing to do with a shipping manifest or a client. John was determined to make it home in time for his granddaughter's birthday. The thought of her smile was the fuel that warmed him against the biting Wyoming cold. It was his guiding star, pulling him eastward across the frozen plains. The steady rhythm of the engine, the familiar scent of diesel and coffee, the endless white lines disappearing under his truck. It was all part of a predictable dance he had perfected over a lifetime. He was in his element, a king in his castle, of chrome and steel. But the road is a living, breathing thing. It has a memory, a temper, and a will of its own. It doesn't care about birthdays or deadlines. And on this particular day, as the snow began to fall a little harder and the wind began to howl a little louder, the road had other plans. Stay with me until the end, because what started as a simple drive home was about to become a desperate race against time. That it was not a siren that broke the hypnotic calm. It was a voice, a crackle of static from the old CB radio, followed by a sound that cut through the cold air sharper than any gust of wind. It was the sound of pure panic. A young man's voice, trembling and thin, sliced through the channel 19 chatter. Anyone on this channel? For God's sake, can anyone hear me? My wife, the baby. It is coming now. The blizzard, it has closed the mountain pass. We are stranded somewhere near mile marker 210. Big John's eyes flickered to the green glow of his dashboard. Mile marker 210. That was less than 15 miles ahead. He knew that stretch of I-80. He knew it was a death trap when the weather turned, a place where the wind and snow conspired to swallow vehicles whole. And right here, this is a moment that defines a person. We all face these turning points, don't we? Those unexpected moments that demand a choice between the easy road and the right one. And if this story is already making you feel something, if you can feel that tension building, do me a favor and hit that like button. It truly helps more than you know. Your interaction is the fuel that keeps this channel running, bringing these powerful stories to light. I would love to read your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to trust a complete stranger or be that stranger for someone else? Sharing your experience is what makes this more than just a channel. It builds a community of people who appreciate these acts of quiet courage. Your support ensures these stories of everyday heroes reach the people who need to hear them. So if you believe in that, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. That way, you will not miss what happens next for Big John. Alone in his cab, with a desperate voice echoing from the speaker, there was no community to consult. There was only the biting wind, the endless snow, and a decision that had to be made in a heartbeat. The official word from the highway patrol would be clear: stay put, wait for assistance. But John was a veteran of the road. He knew what waiting meant in a Wyoming blizzard. It could mean hours. It could mean tomorrow. And he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his gut, that this family did not have that kind of time. His hand, steady and sure, reached for the radio mic. His own voice, a low and calming rumble, cut through the static like a lifeline. This is Big John. I am coming, kid. Keep your wife warm and stay on the main road. I am on my way. Releasing the mic was a promise. It was an unbreakable contract made across the airwaves in the heart of a storm. This single decision was a moment of profound transformation. It was a choice to abandon the logic of the logbook and embrace the instinct of a protector. His mindset shifted in an instant from a driver just doing his job to a first responder on a mission, where the only backup was his own grit and the power of his 18-wheeler. It is in these critical moments, far from any witness, that a person's true character is revealed. The hidden truth of the matter is that for men like John, there was no other choice to make. The code of the road is not written in any company handbook. It is a law of the heart, an unspoken pact of mutual survival etched into the soul by countless lonely miles. It says you do not leave anyone behind. Ever dot his hands, steady as ever, turned the massive steering wheel. The Iron Maiden groaned in protest as it veered off the plowed, predictable safety of the interstate and onto the treacherous shoulder, its tires sinking immediately into the deep, powder-like snow. The impact was immediate. The easy hum of the engine turned into a deep, guttural roar as it fought for traction. This was the beginning of the real journey. A journey not measured in miles, but in heartbeats. Minutes later, which felt like an eternity, his headlights cut through the swirling curtain of white and found them. A small SUV and a travel trailer, looking like a wounded animal, already half buried by the relentless blizzard. The vehicles. Lights were faint, a dying pulse in the overwhelming darkness. Big John pulled his rig up, creating a massive wall of steel that shielded the smaller vehicle from the worst of the wind's fury. A figure stumbled out of the driver's side, a young man, his face pale with a mixture of terror and disbelief. This was David. Behind him, through the frosted glass, John could see the silhouette of his wife, Elena. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what happened next was not just about courage. It was about a lifetime of accumulated knowledge. It was a revelation that would never be found on a GPS or a modern map. John knew the official rescue teams were useless here. The mountain pass was hopelessly blocked. But he also knew something else. He knew a secret, a ghost path, a forgotten artery that the state had abandoned decades ago. Looking at the terrified couple, he knew their survival depended on this hidden truth, a path that existed only in the memory of old-timers like him. He stepped out of his cab, the freezing air hitting him like a physical blow, and walked over to David's window. His voice was calm, a stark contrast to the screaming wind. "The highway is a lost cause," he said, his words clear and firm. "But there is another way, an old logging service road. It is dangerous. It is not maintained, but it cuts behind this mountain and comes out the other side." David looked at him, his eyes wide with a desperate, flickering hope. He was looking at the behind-the-scenes of survival, a plan so audacious it seemed impossible. But in John's steady gaze, he saw not madness, but absolute certainty. Comment below with the code of the road if you understand this kind of silent promise. Stay behind me. John said to David, his eyes as firm and steady as steel, do not lose sight of my lights, no matter what happens. The what if did not matter anymore. The decision had been made. This was no longer a consideration of risk versus reward. It was a mission. What followed was not a high-speed chase. It was a slow, brutal dance with death. The Iron Maiden, big, John's Peterbilt, became a plow, a shield, an ark in the frozen sea. It forged a path where none existed, its powerful headlights cutting through the blinding white chaos. The wind howled against the cab, a relentless, mournful sound, like a hungry wolf stalking its prey. Ice-laden tree branches scraped against the metal, the sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. Every turn was a blind guess, every incline a severe test of torque, traction, and raw courage. This was where experience became an art form. John was not just driving. He was reading the unseen terrain, feeling the subtle shifts of the earth beneath his tires. He was anticipating every dip, every hidden drift, every potential trap with the instinct of an old sea captain navigating a treacherous strait. This was the hidden truth of a master of the road. It is a language spoken between man, machine, and nature itself. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the mentality required for this kind of journey is forged in solitude and pressure. This is a look behind the scenes of what it truly means to be responsible for others in a crisis. The transformation from a lone driver to a shepherd leading his flock through a valley of death is profound. It is about a series of micro-decisions, each one having a life or death impact. You do not think about the destination. You think about the next 10 feet of road. You think about keeping the engine temperature steady, about the angle of your turn, about the rhythm of the other driver's breathing. You can almost feel through the static of the radio. This is a mental state of absolute focus, where the entire world shrinks to the space between your headlights and the faint, desperate lights you are protecting in your rearview mirror. It is a revelation of character. The journey strips away everything non-essential, leaving only the core of who you are. There is no room for ego, no room for fear, only for the relentless execution of the task at hand. This is the grit that built this country, a quiet, unwavering resolve that you rarely see on the news, but that exists on every back road and every forgotten highway. John was now the living embodiment of that spirit, his truck a testament to the power of one man's will against the fury of the elements. He was their guide, their protector, their only hope. And just when it seemed like the worst might be behind them, the storm unleashed a new level of fury. The path ahead grew steeper, the snow deeper. And then a new, more terrifying sound came. Over the radio, a sound of mechanical failure. Write the Iron Maiden in the comments if you are feeling the power of this journey. Halfway through the ghost path, the unthinkable happened. The already faint headlights in John's mirror flickered once, twice, and then died completely. The engine of David's SUV sputtered, coughed, and fell silent. The impact of this new crisis was absolute. Over the radio, David's voice was no longer just panicked. It was the sound of utter defeat. I can't do it, John. We are stuck. The engine is dead. We are not moving. In that single moment, the fragile thread of hope stretched to its breaking point. Elena let out a cry of pain. From the passenger seat, a sound that pierced the roar of the blizzard and went straight to John's heart. This was the moment of truth, the point in any great journey where despair threatens to swallow everything, the moment where all the planning, all the courage, seems to have been for nothing. This was the test within the test. Nature had played its hand. Now it was John's turn to make a decision that would define the rest of their lives. He brought the Iron Maiden to a halt, its air brakes hissing in the frozen air, a sound of defiance against the storm. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what we are about to witness is a revelation of the unwritten code of the road. This goes beyond simple kindness. This is about a fundamental law of human connection that surfaces in the most extreme circumstances. The behind the scenes of this moment is not about mechanical knowledge or physical strength. It is about a mental transformation, a shift in mindset from leader to savior. The hidden truth is that in these moments, you do not have time for doubt. You operate on a different level of instinct and resolve. Big John did not hesitate. He did not weigh the odds. He did not consider the immense strain it would put on his own truck, his own livelihood. He simply acted. Without a word, he put his truck in park, grabbed a heavy-duty tow chain from his toolbox, and stepped out into the teeth of the blizzard. The wind hit him with the force of a physical assault, nearly knocking him off his feet. But his movements were deliberate, economical, the practiced motions of a man who had faced down storms both literal and metaphorical his entire life. He trudged through the thigh-deep snow, a solitary figure fighting his way toward the darkened SUV. The light from his own truck cast long dancing shadows, making the scene look like something from a nightmare. He reached David's window, his face already caked in ice, and simply pointed to the front of the SUV. He did not need words. His actions spoke a universal language of determination. He expertly hooked the massive chain to the frame of the stranded vehicle. The clank of heavy metal on metal was a sound of promise, a declaration that this was not over. He shouted against the wind, his voice a gravelly roar. The Iron Maiden will pull us both. You just steer. This decision had a massive impact. It was no longer a truck leading a car. It was one single entity, one man's will dragging the weight of 3 souls, plus 2 tons of dead metal, through the heart of the storm. Type, never give up. In the comments if you are inspired by this unbreakable spirit. The slack in the heavy chain vanished with a deafening crack that echoed even above the storm. For a moment, nothing happened. The Iron Maiden's massive tires spun uselessly on the ice, digging trenches in the snow. The engine roared, a deep-throated sound of pure, unbridled power being pushed to its absolute limit. This was the moment of decision for the machine itself. Would it find purchase, or would they be lost forever? Then, with a shudder that vibrated through John's entire body, the tires gripped. The convoy, now a single straining entity, lurched forward. The journey that followed was the stuff of legends, a story that would be whispered in truck stops for years to come, even if no one knew the hero's name. The progress was agonizingly slow. It was measured in inches, not feet. Each foot gained was a victory wrested from the jaws of the storm. The Peterbilt's engine screamed in a register John had rarely heard, a testament to the immense strain it was under. The temperature gauge climbed steadily into the red. He was asking everything of his machine, his partner of so many years, and she was giving it all back. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the battle was not just mechanical. It was a war of mentality. This is the behind the scenes of true endurance, the hidden truth that separates survivors from statistics. John was no longer just a man in a truck. He and the Iron Maiden were one. He felt every slip of the tires, every groan of the chassis, every subtle shift in the immense weight he was pulling. His entire consciousness was focused on the symphony of mechanical stress. He was not thinking of failure or success. He was listening to the pitch of the engine, to know when to ease off the throttle for a split second to prevent a stall. He was feeling the pull of the trailer through the steering wheel to anticipate a slide before it began. This was a masterclass in focus, a revelation of what 40 years on the road truly teaches you. It is not just about knowing the routes. It is about becoming part of the road itself. The impact of every decision was instantaneous. A slightly wrong angle on a turn could mean a jackknife. A moment's hesitation could mean losing all momentum. This was a high-stakes chess game played on a board made of ice and fury, and John was playing for 3 lives. The miles crawled by like wounded animals. An hour passed, then another. The world outside the cab was a blur of white and black, a chaotic, abstract painting of nature's rage. Inside, there was only the roar of the engine, the glow of the dashboard, and the unwavering focus of one man. And then, through the dizzying white veil, he saw it. At first, it was just a smudge, a slight change in the texture of the darkness ahead. He blinked, unsure if it was a trick of his tired eyes. But it grew stronger. It was a faint, yellow-orange glow, unmistakable. It was the light of civilization, the small, forgotten town of Rock River. It was a beacon of hope. They were going to make it downright hope in the storm, in the comments if you believe in finding light in the darkest of times. The silence that followed David's broken transmission was absolute. It was a silence heavier and colder than any snowdrift. In that void, the only sound was the howling of the wind and the sharp, rhythmic gasps of Elena in the passenger seat. This was the moment the journey truly began. Not the journey across the mountain, but the journey through the razor-thin canyon between hope and utter despair. For David, a young man about to become a father, the world had just ended. He had failed. His vehicle was dead. His wife was in labor. They were trapped in a frozen tomb, miles from anywhere. It was the ultimate test of a man's spirit, a point where the human mind can easily surrender to the overwhelming odds. The desperation was a palpable thing, a third passenger in their cold, dark vehicle. And in that moment of complete helplessness, all he could do was watch the taillights of the giant truck ahead, his last, fading connection to the living world. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the mentality that surfaces in a crisis like this is a powerful revelation. We are about to go behind the scenes of a critical decision, but the hidden truth is, for a man like Big John, it was not a decision at all. It was an inevitability. It was the culmination of a lifetime of unwritten rules and unspoken promises. This is where the transformation from a simple helper to a true guardian takes place. It is a shift in mindset so profound that the concept of giving up does not even exist. The impact of Elena's cry of pain was not a signal of defeat for John. It was a call to arms. It was a bell that could not be unrung. The journey had just become his full responsibility. He was no longer just a guide. He was now their lifeline, their engine, their will to survive. This is the core of the Truckers. Code, a truth that most people will never see. It is not about being a hero. It is about an unbreakable sense of duty, a refusal to let the darkness win, not on his watch. Without a single word of hesitation, John flipped a series of switches on his dashboard, and the massive Peterbilt came to a shuddering halt. The hiss of the air brakes was a sound of defiance, a challenge thrown back at the storm. He did not radio David to discuss options. There were no options to discuss. He grabbed his heavy winter coat and gloves. A grim look of determination sat on his face. The moment he opened the door, the blizzard invaded his cab, a furious swirling vortex of ice and snow. He stepped out into the maelstrom, a solid, unmovable figure against the chaos of nature. He fought his way through the blizzard, the wind tearing at him, the snow blinding him. He was not just walking. He was wading through the very essence of the storm. He reached his toolbox and pulled out a thick, greasy tow chain, each link as heavy as a fist. The bitter cold of the metal seared his hands even through his thick gloves, but he did not flinch. This was just part of the process. Right. The code is real in the comments. If you believe in this level of commitment, that the act of hooking that tow chain was a sacrament. It was a physical manifestation of the code, a commitment made not with words, but with cold, hard steel. As John cinched the final hook to the frame of David's dead SUV, he wasn't just connecting two vehicles, he was binding their fates together. The impact of this decision was immense. The Iron Maiden was a powerful rig, but it was designed to pull a balanced load on paved roads, not to drag 2 tons of dead weight and a travel trailer through a mountain blizzard. He was asking his truck, his partner, to do the impossible. He was risking his engine, his transmission, his very livelihood for people he had never met. But that is the hidden truth of the code. It does not calculate risk. It does not measure cost. It only recognizes need. As he shouted against the wind for David to just steer, he was giving the young man more than just instructions. He was giving him a role. He was giving him back a measure of control in a situation that had stripped him of everything. It was a masterstroke of crisis psychology, born from decades of quiet observation of human nature on the open road. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because this journey reveals something fundamental about the human spirit. This is a look behind the scenes of what it means to truly take responsibility. The transformation happening in that moment was not just about John's actions, but about the shift in mentality for everyone involved. For David, seeing this stranger brave the storm to physically tether them to his own vehicle was a powerful revelation. It was a tangible message that they were not alone. It reignited the embers of hope that the storm had nearly extinguished. He was no longer a victim waiting for a miracle. He was now a part of the solution, his hands on the wheel, his focus entirely on following the path that John was forging. For them, this decision, this simple act of connecting a chain, changed the entire dynamic of their survival. It turned individual despair into a unified struggle. It was a team of two, a veteran and a rookie, bound together by a chain and a common purpose, to get Elena and her unborn child to safety. Back in his cab, John engaged the clutch. The entire rig strained, the engine's roar deepening as it took on the massive, uncooperative weight. For a terrifying second, the wheels spun, whining against the ice. And then, with a lurch that shook both vehicles, they began to move. They were one, a lumbering, improbable beast fighting its way through. The frozen hell, the weight of 3 lives, of a future not yet born, now rested on the straining steel of the Iron Maiden and the unwavering will of the old man at the wheel. The journey ahead would be the most difficult of his entire life. But for the first time since the engine died, there was movement. And with movement, there was a chance. Type the chain of hope in the comments if you believe in the power of human connection. Those next few miles were not measured in distance, but in willpower. The journey was a brutal, slow-motion ballet of stress and endurance. The Iron Maiden, a machine built for the open road, was now in a bare-knuckle brawl with the mountain. Its engine, which normally purred with a deep, confident rhythm, was now screaming a high, desperate song of protest. The temperature needle was buried in the red, a constant, glowing warning of catastrophic failure. The wheels, great rings of rubber and steel, fought a losing battle for traction, slipping and sliding on the treacherous ice hidden beneath the deep snow. Yet John did not yield. He held his course with a force of will that seemed to flow from him, through the steering wheel and into the very soul of the machine. He was one with the struggle, his entire being focused on the single task of moving forward. And behind him, David matched his intensity, his hands locked on the steering wheel of his dead SUV, his eyes fixed on the red glow of John's taillights, the twin beacons that were leading them out of the abyss. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the arrival at a destination, after such an ordeal is a profound moment of transformation. It is more than just relief. It is a revelation. We are about to go behind the scenes of that first moment of safety. The hidden truth is that the end of the physical journey is often the beginning of the emotional one. The impact of seeing that first light of civilization is a powerful, almost spiritual experience. After what seemed like a lifetime in the swirling, monochromatic chaos of the storm, a new color appeared in the distance. It was a faint, hazy, yellow-orange glow. At first, John thought it was a hallucination, a cruel trick played by his exhausted mind. He blinked hard, wiping the condensation from the inside of his windshield. But the light was still there. It was real. It grew brighter, clearer, resolving itself into the unmistakable shapes of streetlights. It was the small, isolated town of Rock River, a tiny outpost of humanity that at that moment looked as glorious as the gates of heaven. They had done it. They had beaten the storm. With a final heroic surge of power, the Iron Maiden dragged its precious cargo onto the town's main street. The sudden smoothness of the plowed pavement was a jarring, welcome shock. John brought the convoy to a halt. Directly in front of the town's small medical clinic, a single-story building with a light burning over the door. He did not even have time to put the truck in park before the clinic doors flew open. A nurse, alerted by the roar of the massive engine, rushed out, followed by another. They saw Elena's pale face, the desperation in David's eyes, and they understood immediately. They moved with a calm, practiced urgency, helping Elena from the car and rushing her inside. The journey was over. They were safe. John finally allowed himself to kill the engine. The sudden, deafening silence was broken only by his own ragged breathing and the soft ticking of the cooling engine. He leaned his forehead against the cold steering wheel, the adrenaline finally beginning to recede, leaving a profound, bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. That if this moment gives you chills, write safe harbor in the comments. Hours later, after the storm had finally exhausted itself, and a fragile quiet had settled over the small town, David found John. The old trucker was sitting alone in a booth at the town's only 24-hour diner, cradling a mug of black coffee, his massive frame looking strangely small in the worn vinyl seat. The exhaustion was still etched on his face, but there was a deep sense of peace in his eyes. David approached the table, his own eyes red-rimmed, not from exhaustion, but from overwhelming emotion. A healthy baby girl had been born less than an hour ago. He looked at the old man who had saved his family, his heart so full of gratitude that words felt hopelessly inadequate. "You are a hero," David said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "An absolute hero. The local news station from Cheyenne is on its way. The clinic called them. Everyone needs to know what you did for us tonight." John looked up from his coffee, his expression unreadable. He took a slow sip, the silence stretching between them. Then he shook his head slowly, a small, almost imperceptible gesture. "Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what we are witnessing here is perhaps the most important part of this entire journey. It is the final revelation, the ultimate truth about the character of a man like Big John, the refusal of glory. This is a look behind the scenes of true humility, a mindset that is becoming increasingly rare in our world. The hidden truth is that for men who live by the code, the act itself is the reward. Public recognition is not just unwanted, it is a violation of the spirit of the deed. The transformation is complete, not when the hero receives a medal, but when he quietly disappears back into the life he chose, his sense of duty fulfilled. The impact of John's next words would stay with David for the rest of his life, a lesson, far more profound than any he had ever learned in a classroom. "This was a masterclass in character, Dot. No need for any of that, son," John said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. On the road, We look out for each other. That is all it is. Today, it was you. Tomorrow, it might be me stranded on the side of the road. That is the code. It was not a speech. It was a simple statement of fact, a declaration of a fundamental law of his universe. There was no false modesty in his voice, only the quiet certainty of a man who lived by a set of principles that were as solid and unyielding as the mountains he had just conquered. He was not rejecting David's gratitude. He was defining it. The gratitude was not owed to him as an individual, but to the code itself, to the community of the road that he was a part of. This decision, to remain anonymous, to deflect the spotlight, was the final, crucial act of his heroism. It preserved the purity of what he had done. It was not about him. It was about the principle of helping a stranger in need. Period. It was about ensuring the focus remained on the act of human decency, not on the person who performed it. If this quiet humility resonates with you, write the real hero in the comments. Before David could protest further, before any news cameras could arrive to capture the scene, Big John placed a few dollars on the counter, gave a slight nod, and walked out of the diner. He did not look back. He climbed up into the high cab. Of the Iron Maiden, the familiar groan of the driver's seat, a welcome comfort. With a blast of air and the deep, rumbling cough of the diesel engine coming back to life, he was gone. He pulled out onto the quiet, snow-dusted street and pointed the nose of his truck east, toward the now-clearing sky and the promise of home. As he merged back onto the main artery of Interstate 80, the road was a different place. The storm had passed. The asphalt was clear. The world was calm again. In his rearview mirror, the small town of Rock River shrank and then vanished. There was no metal on his dashboard. There would be no headline with his name on it. His reward was something far more profound, something you could not hold in your hand. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the final leg of this journey is a revelation about what truly matters. This is the behind the scenes of a life well lived, a final look at the mentality of an anonymous hero. The hidden truth is that the greatest rewards are internal. The true transformation is not in being recognized by others, but in knowing, in your own heart, that you met the moment. The impact of this event would not be measured in news articles, but in the ripple effect of one good deed. It would live on in the story David and Elena would tell their daughter about the night she was born. It would live on in the quiet satisfaction that warmed John on the long drive home. This journey was over, but its legacy was just beginning. John drove on, the steady hum of his engine a familiar lullaby. He was just a trucker again, a man doing his job, but something had shifted. The road ahead looked the same, but he saw it through different eyes. He was not carrying a cargo of commercial goods anymore. In his heart, he carried the weightless, precious cargo of a duty fulfilled. He carried the image of a new life that had entered the world because he had refused to let hope die in a Wyoming blizzard. He thought about his own granddaughter, and a small, genuine smile touched his lips for the first time in many hours. He would make it to her birthday after all. And as the first rays of the morning sun broke over the horizon, painting the endless, plains in shades of gold and pink, Big John, a quiet, anonymous hero of the American highway, continued his journey home. He was a knight of the road, his Iron Maiden his trusty steed, his code his shield, his reward the simple, profound peace of a clean conscience and a country to cross. Write journey on in the comments if you were moved by this story of quiet heroism. And so the story of Big John, the anonymous hero of the Wyoming blizzard, finds its place on the long, quiet road of memory. If you are still here, listening to my voice right now, it means this story connected with you on a deeper level. And for that, I thank you. It shows that you understand that these are not just tales about trucks and highways. They are stories about the human heart. This is the community we are building here together. a place for powerful stories that often go untold. If you want to, continue this journey with us and be the first to hear the next story from the road. The best way to do that is to subscribe to the channel. It just lets me know that this matters to you as much as it matters to me. And I would love to know you rode with us all the way to the end of this one. Let me know in the comments by simply writing, "I'm with you till the end." It is a small signal, but it means the world, and it shows me who the true story lovers are in this community. And of course, if this story truly resonated with you, leaving a like is the quietest, simplest way to give a nod of respect to all the Big Johns out there. The road does not end here, though. There is another story I think you will love waiting for you right here on the screen. Just click on it, and we can keep this journey going together.